Hello, this is Angelia, and you are listening to or watching the podcast, Why You Do What You Do, the podcast that talks about human development and psychology to kind of try and help you figure out maybe a little bit more of why you do what you do. And last time we were talking about moral reasoning, and we're going to continue with that. Um, PJ proposed that moral reasoning develops in 3 stages. The first stage, approximately ages 2 to 7, corresponding with the pre-operational stage, is based on obedience to authority. So, remember that what you tell your kids, they're going to take as law, because to them, you are the ultimate authority. So be careful what you say. Young children think rigidly about moral concepts because they are egocentric, meaning, it's all about them, very selfish, egocentric. They cannot imagine more than one way of looking at a moral issue. And there's adults like that, unfortunately. They believe that rules come from adult authorities and cannot be bent or changed. That behavior is either right or wrong, and that any offense deserves punishment, regardless of intent. And as we know, intent is everything. The intent behind an action is everything. Because, it's not the words that come out of your mouth, it's the intentions of your heart that shape your action. The second stage, age 7 or 8 to 10 or 11, corresponding with the stage of concrete operations, is characterized by increasing flexibility and some degree of autonomy based on mutual respect and cooperation. And if you've noticed that, I used to teach at a daycare. I taught 3, 4, and 5-year-olds for a couple of years, and they do start to learn to, respect each other and cooperate with each other to do things and build things. And, it's a big jump from, little selfish toddler people to, older kids who are, more willing to cooperate with their peers. As children interact with more people and come into contact with a wider range of viewpoints, and that's the thing, there's some people who are very stuck in their viewpoints and can't understand other people's viewpoints or anything at all. And that's because they have not been exposed to them. I know some people who grew up out in the country. They were not exposed to any other cultures or religions or anything. So they have a very hard time accepting, these. So, that is not a good thing, you should get out and experience life and experience the cultures. And that's kind of why the Amish have their, I forget the word, Rom something. But, they let the kid go out for a year and experience the world and decide if they want to be a part of the community or not. And that's, something that, everyone should do, I think. It would help a lot of people. They begin to discard the idea that there is a single, absolute standard of right and wrong, and to develop their own sense of justice based on fairness or equal treatment for all. And that's, how you're supposed to feel, that everything should be fair and equal for everybody. And if you don't feel that way, there's probably an ist behind a word that you are. So you might want to start thinking about that. Because is that what Jesus would do? I don't think so. Because they can consider more than one aspect of a situation, they can make more subtle moral judgments, such as taking into consideration the intent behind an action. Like I said, the intent behind the action is more important. Like if you were carrying a pile of books to sit on a table for your friend to keep them from having to carry that heavy pile of books because your hands are already kind of full, and you accidentally knock over a glass of water. Your intent was to be helpful, but this thing happened. Should you be punished for that? Of course not, because your intent was to be helpful. So intent has more to do with what happens than the action itself, And if you don't think like that, then you're kind of a jerk. Oh, she did this, but she was trying to help you. You know? Around age 11 or 12, when children may become capable of formal reasoning, the third stage of moral development arrives. Now, equality takes on a different meaning for the child. The belief that everyone should be treated alike gradually gives way to the idea of equity, or taking specific circumstances into account, because they start to realize, this person did this thing because they wanted to do a bad thing. This person accidentally did this thing. They understand that there is equity. There's a difference between someone who purposefully does something and someone who accidentally does something, and that's what judges are supposed to, take into account when they're judging cases and things like that, is what was the intent behind the action. Did they purposely do this? Did they accidentally do this? What was the intent? Of taking specific circumstances into account. Thus, a child of this age might say that a 2-year-old who spilled ink on the tablecloth should be held to a less demanding moral standard than a 10-year-old who did the same thing. Because, the 10-year-old knows more and probably knows they shouldn't have done what they were doing, more so than a 2-year-old does, because they're still very impulsive. Information processing researchers focus on improvements in the efficiency of mental operations, how much information children can handle at a given time, and how quickly and accurately they can process it. And that's, sometimes you can overwhelm a kid. And I went to homeschool my kids, but I also satellite schooled my kids because I got too much flack from the family on homeschooling kids. But I could see, where there were problems where they just couldn't quite get this yet. They understood this and this, but not quite there yet on that. So I would work with them on the thing that they were, good at, because I knew that if you move from one stage to another, there needs to be a process there. You don't just know this and then suddenly you can come to this. It takes practice and learning, and then you can see where the light bulb go ding. Oh, okay, so this, when you're doing this, can apply to this. Be there for your kids. Satellite school your kids at home. Get workbooks, and go along with what the school's doing. And just be there for your kids and help them out, because some kids need more help than others, More efficient processing makes it easier for children to learn and remember. Differences in efficiency of processing may help account for the range of scores on psychometric intelligence tests, because like I said, we're all different, which may show now, and they become more reliable predictors of a school performance. Because like I said, not all kids, are uber geniuses, and some kids need some intervention. They need some help. And it's a good thing, for teachers to recognize that, counselors to recognize that, and to get these children tested so they can see where the child might need some help. As children move through the school years, they make steady progress in their abilities to process and retain information. And that's important for all of us, to be able to process information, and to retain it, in our minds, because that's how we remember. If we don't process and retain anything, we're going to be in trouble. We're not going to know how to do anything. They understand more about how memory works, and this knowledge enables them to use strategies or deliberate plans to help them remember. And I'm sure we've all done that. We've all used the, excuse me a second here. We've all used, like we have to remember, I need 8 roller skate, 9 stitch in time, things like that. We've all used those to try and, help us to remember things. I had a cough and it stifled and did a weird thing. Yeah. Mm. They understand more about how memory works, and this knowledge enables them to use strategies. Oh, we just said that. As their knowledge expands, they become more aware of what kinds of information are important to pay attention to and remember. Because not everything you see is important. Not everything you hear is important. You need to be able to discern what you needed to hear or see or learn and understand out of anything. The way the brain stores information is believed to be universal, though the efficiency of the system varies from person to person. So that's why some people have good memories, some people not so much. And I'm finding out at this age, mine's starting to slip a little bit. Now I was like talking to my dad. I was like, I forget this. I hate this. He's like, hey, welcome to where everybody else is, because in the younger days, I was always sought after to be the one playing. Games where you needed to have a memory, like Trivial Pursuit and things like that, because I remembered it a lot. If I was paying attention and it made its way in, I remembered it. But now there are problems where some days, where did I put that? I was just here. What did I do with it? And I have to go back and look, say, well, it's here and here. Okay, there it is. And to me, that's kind of odd. In my 50s. High end of 50s, to suddenly be experiencing this, because before, it was there, it was recall, and you could use the memory for, evidence in court if they could play it out of my head, because it was there. But now there's starting to be slippage, and I'm like, oh, I don't like this. I don't like this. Information processing models depict the brain as containing 3 storehouses: sensory memory, working memory, and long-term memory. Oh my goodness. Sensory memory is the storage system's initial entry point, a temporary holding tank for incoming sensory information. Sensory memory shows little change with age. As we have seen, even infants show it. So anything, you're seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, you're going to remember that. Even babies, have that kind of memory. So that's your first kind of memory you really have. And a 5-year-old immediate recall is about as good as that of an adult. So if it's something you just experienced, you could recall that, quickly, as a child, as an adult. It's immediate memory, something that just happened, you can recall it pretty easy. However, without processing or encoding, sensory memories fade quickly, because you're not thinking about it. You're not you're not thinking about an hour later what that meal you just had at lunchtime tasted like. It's forgotten. It's done. It was great while you were eating it, but you're not thinking about it now, unless maybe you have food issues or whatever, and you're like, oh, that was so good, maybe I'll get some more later. But in general, you're not. So information that is being encoded or retrieved is kept in working memory, a short-term storehouse for information a person is actively working on. That is, information the person is trying to understand, remember, or think about. So when you're trying to learn something or study or something, that's where that comes into play. You need to get it in there. You need to remember it. You need to be able to recall it for like a test or something. Or it's something important to you for your job or whatever. So, that's where your working memory comes into play. You need to have that work for you. It is in working memory that mental representations are prepared for or recalled from, storing memory that mental, oh my gosh, it is in working memory, oh my gosh, The mental representations are prepared for or recalled from storage. I just did that over for you because my tongue just went, ugh. Brain imaging studies have found that working memory is located partly in the prefrontal cortex, the large portion of the frontal lobe directly behind the forehead. So, in there. This region of the brain develops more slowly than any other. Not until the second half of the first year do the prefrontal cortex and associated circuitry develop the capacity for working memory. So, like I say, them little people, they born crazy. They're not wired right yet. That's why you gotta keep an eye on them. They'll do crazy things. So, they're not even starting to get wired, until, they're in the, heading basically towards 2 years old. So, they ain't quite there yet. And that's why you'll see small babies just ready to jump off, the edge of the bed, a ledge, a house in some cases, because they don't understand that's dangerous. They don't have that fear yet. So them little people crazy. You gotta watch them. The efficiency of working memory is limited by its capacity. Researchers may assess the capacity of working memory by asking children to recall a series my goodness, of digits in reverse order. For example, 283751 if they heard 157382. Because some people's brains are like that. I know a woman who could say the alphabet backwards, and I would have to sit there and think about it, but she was just like, so evidently in her brain there was that thing going on. And it's good, to have people test your kids. Don't get defensive if people want to test your kids, because they're trying to help your kid. They're like, there's a problem here. This kid is not learning as fast or as much. Let's identify if there is a problem, because I know kids who got tested and there was not a problem. They were just lazy and didn't do their work. So, but there are kids who do have problems. And if they can do some intervention to help the kids, that's good. The capacity of working memory, that is, the number of digits a child can recall, increases rapidly in middle childhood. That's why the teachers have you do those little memory tests, what comes next, and things of that nature. Don't get defensive if the school suggests your kid get tested. Most of the time, they are legitimately trying to help your kid. Now, there are some teachers. I ran across one when my youngest one was in 4th grade who just do not like learning disabled children. They do not like them, don't want them in their room. You slow the whole class down. It's like, no, hello, what kind of person are you? Piece of, there's no reason for that. And if that does happen, you need to advocate for that child. They need to know your name. They need to get to know you well. You need to be up there monitoring the room. You can be up there talking to counselors, principals, whatever. You need to advocate for that child. I had to take a high school to the federal level for an ECE issue. I started out with the local school system, who kind of gave them a little talking to. And then they called me and got nasty about it. Saying, oh, well, the time. I said, I don't care. His IEP says this, so this is what y'all need to do. You can't tell me you don't have time. Your teachers don't have time. This is what you need to do. So then they kind of gave a little attitude and gave him even more trouble. So then I had to take it to the state. That got me a meeting with a principal who just basically said, well, we have a difference of opinion on this, clearly. So then I took it to the federal level, to the federal ECE people. And then after that, they did what they were supposed to do. But that's a dang shame that I had to go to the federal level of exceptional child education to get them to do what they were supposed to be doing to begin with. So you got to advocate for your kids, because there are petty dictator teachers principals, counselors who rule their little piece of the world with an iron fist and think, the rules don't apply to them. They do what they want to do in their school. So be prepared if you have a child with any learning disability to be an advocate for them, because not everybody else is going to look out for their best interests. And that's a shame, but it's a fact. At age 5 in middle childhood, at ages 5 to 6, children usually remember only 2 digits. The typical adolescent remembers 6. So that's a pretty good jump between, how many numbers you can remember from then 5 to your teen years. According to a widely used information processing model, a central executive controls the processing operations that go on in working memory. And that doesn't mean you got a little dude sitting at a desk running things. Like, there was a movie where I forget who was in charge or who it was about. But anyway, there was this... William Shatner played the voice of the guy who was like in charge of the brain, Might have been... I don't remember. But anyway, it was an alright movie. But so if you want to imagine that there's a little person in your brain sitting at a desk and they are in charge of everything, that's your central executive. The central executive orders information encoded for transfer to long-term memory, a storehouse of virtually unlimited capacity that holds information for long periods of time. Because we use not all of our brain. They say 10%. It's a little more than that, usually. Some people maybe not. But like this whole area through here has the capacity to store memory. So, all those folds in the brain, are for doing that. So, like Albert Einstein, his brain had all these folds and it weighed a lot. Whereas someone maybe not so bright has kind of a smoother brain. So, it just depends how much long-term memory you can store. Now, you can also learn and help yourself with your memory. Like learn a new language. I'm still studying. I've been studying Spanish for years, still studying it. I doubt if I could carry a conversation with a Spanish person, but I can do the schoolwork and read it and figure it out. And, because people talk too fast in their own language and you're like, wait, slow down. But of course, you can't do that, in a situation where you're talking to somebody. But you can do crossword puzzles, word searches, and that behooves older people to do that if you realize you're starting to lose some of the memory. You keep the old noggin moving. The central executive also retrieves information from long-term memory for processing in working memory. The central executive can temporarily expand the capacity of working memory by moving information into 2 separate subsidiary systems. One of which holds verbal information and the other visual and spatial images, while the central executive is occupied with other tasks. The central executive, which, may be located in the frontal lobes, seems to mature sometime between 8 and 10 years old. So, before that, the kid's kind of still, flighty, and maybe I remember, maybe I don't, So, that's why a lot of people say that the age of 8 is the age of, self-realization, responsibility, whatever. Like there are churches, no one below the age of 8 can get baptized because they don't think you are capable of knowing what you want and what you're doing before that age. During middle childhood, reaction time improves and processing speed for such tasks as matching pictures, adding numbers in one's head, and recalling spatial information increases rapidly as unneeded synapses or neural connections in the brain are pruned away. So you have like a little gardener in your brain. If you don't need that anymore, it's pruning it, you know. And sometimes that's not necessarily great because maybe you didn't think you needed it, but now you do. And you have to have the recall. So, Okay, faster, more efficient processing increases the amount of information a child can keep in working memory, making possible better recall and more complex, higher level thinking. So that's the whole point. And developing your working memory is because then you can recall faster and better and remember more. So, if you're finding your memory slipping a little bit, study a language, do some crossword puzzles, word searches, or whatever to keep the noggin turning. Between ages 5 and 7, the brain's frontal lobes undergo significant development and reorganization, making possible improved recall and metamemory. My goodness, I still got a coughing fit here. Knowledge about the processes of memory, and that's what metamemory means. From kindergarten through 5th grade, children advance steadily in understanding of memory. Kindergartners and 1st graders know that people remember better if they study longer, that people forget things with time, and that it is easier to relearn something than to learn it for the first time. By 3rd grade, children know that some people remember better than others, and that some things are easier to remember than others. One pair of experiments looked at preschoolers, 1st graders, and 3rd graders' beliefs about what influences remembering and forgetting. Most children in all these age groups believe that important events in a story about a birthday party, such as a guest falling into the cake, were more likely to be retained than minor details, such as a guest bringing a ball as a present. Most 1st and 3rd graders, but not most preschoolers, believe that a later experience, playing with a friend who was not at the party, might color a child's recollection of who was at the party. Not until 3rd grade did most children recognize that memory can be distorted by suggestions from others, say that the friend was at the party. I'm going to pause here a second. I'm back. Had to blow my nose. Just when I think this thing is gone, it just keeps coming back, so I don't even know. Devices to aid memory are called mnemonic devices. The most common mnemonic strategies among both children and adults is use of external memory aids. And I'm sure we all, those of us of a certain age, remember the movie Johnny Mnemonic. But other common strategies include rehearsal, organization, and elaboration. Writing down a telephone number, making a list, setting a timer, and putting a library book by the front door are examples of external memory aids. Prompting by something outside of the person. Saying a telephone number over and over after looking it up so as not to forget it before dialing is a form of rehearsal. I do that all the time. Or conscious repetition. Organization is mentally placing information into categories such as animals, furniture, vehicles, and clothing to make it easier to recall. In elaboration, children associate items with something else, such as an imagined scene or story. To remember to buy lemons, ketchup, and napkins, for example, a child might imagine a ketchup bottle balanced on a lemon with a pile of napkins handy to wipe up spilled ketchup. As children get older, they develop better strategies, use them more effectively, and tailor them to meet specific needs. Even kindergartners recognize the value of external aids, and as children mature, they use them more. Children usually do not use rehearsal spontaneously until after first grade, and if taught to do so in one situation, they usually do not apply it to another because the brain's just not there yet. All right, well, I'm going to leave you there. So, hopefully this helped you maybe understand a little bit more about why you do what you do. Until next time.